Welcome back to the channel. Today's story is about love, secrets, and a truth that nobody expected. It all started when Chaik met Amara, a woman who was blind, but somehow saw deeper than anyone else around him. He didn't know then that his world was about to change in ways he could never imagine. Chaik had always been cautious about relationships. He wasn't reckless with his heart, but something about Amara pulled him in. It wasn't just her gentle voice or the way she laughed without seeing him. It was a quiet strength, a calm certainty that made him feel alive in a way he hadn't before. He first noticed her at the market, sitting by a small stall with her cane resting beside her. She was asking questions about vegetables, but her tone carried curiosity that felt genuine, unlike the polite distance most people had. He started visiting the market more often, claiming errands, but really hoping to see her. Soon, small conversations turned into longer ones. He learned she had lost her sight a few years ago but had refused to let it control her life. She lived alone in a modest apartment not far from the market and worked as a seamstress, repairing clothes for neighbors and friends. Chaik admired that independence. One rainy afternoon, he offered her a ride home. She hesitated at first, politely refusing, but eventually agreed. Sitting beside her in the car, Chaik felt a strange connection, as if he was stepping into someone's private world. She asked about his life, his work, even his family, and listened attentively, asking questions that made him think about things he usually kept to himself. That evening, Chaik realized he was smitten. But just as he was beginning to feel comfortable, a small remark from a friend planted a seed of doubt. "Be careful, Chaik," his friend warned. "Not everything is as it seems." Chaik laughed it off, thinking it was just jealousy or overprotectiveness. But deep down, he couldn't shake a feeling that Amara's past held secrets she hadn't told anyone. The next day, he decided to invite her for dinner. He wanted to know her better, to understand her world, and perhaps, to see if the feelings growing inside him were real. What he didn't know was that her story was far more complicated than he could imagine, and meeting her alone was only the beginning of a chain of events that would turn his life upside down. Chaik couldn't stop thinking about Amara after that dinner invitation. He kept replaying her laughter, the way she tilted her head when she was curious, and the calm confidence in her voice. He told himself he wasn't rushing anything, but every time he walked past the market, he found himself looking for her, hoping she would be there. A few days later, she accepted his invitation. Chaik planned a simple dinner at a small cafe in the city, nothing fancy, just enough for them to talk and get to know each other better. Amara arrived quietly, her cane tapping lightly against the floor as she found her way. Chaik helped her with her chair and offered his hand, which she accepted with a soft smile. Over the meal, they spoke about their childhoods, their dreams, and the challenges they had faced. Chaik felt an unusual openness from her, a sincerity that made him drop his usual walls. She spoke about her blindness matter-of-factly, not as a limitation but as a part of her life that shaped her perspective. Chaik listened, fascinated, and realized he had never met anyone quite like her. But as the conversation flowed, Amara's phone rang. She answered quickly, then paused mid-sentence, her tone becoming cautious. Chaik noticed it but didn't ask. After hanging up, she shifted the conversation away, but a flicker of tension lingered in her eyes. Chaik wondered what it could be, sensing there was more to her story than she revealed. On the way home, Chaik offered to walk her to her apartment. The streets were quiet, and the city lights reflected off the wet pavement from a recent drizzle. She moved with confidence, trusting him but still independent. As they approached her building, Aman suddenly stepped out of the shadows. Amara froze for a second, then recognized him and spoke softly. "Not now," she said. The man nodded and left, disappearing down the street. Chaik's curiosity spiked, but she quickly brushed it off, saying it was nothing important. That night, Chaik couldn't sleep. His mind ran in circles, thinking about the Mun and Amara's sudden change in demeanor. Something was hidden, and his instinct told him it was serious. But his feelings for her only grew stronger. He decided he would be patient, learn her story at her pace, and hope that whatever secrets she held wouldn't drive them apart. Little did he know, Amara's past was far more complicated than a stranger in the night. And the truth, when it finally emerged, would challenge everything he thought he knew about love, trust, and the person he had begun to fall for so deeply. The next morning, Chaik found himself restless. He kept replaying the moment with the men outside Amara's building. Who was he? And why did she react the way she did? He tried to push the thoughts aside, focusing on work, but every ping of his phone made him hope for a message from her. Amara, meanwhile, went about her day as usual. She visited a few clients, repairing clothes and stitching uniforms, moving with the same confident rhythm she always had. But beneath her calm exterior, a small knot of worry lingered. She had always been careful about who knew her story, and Chaik's growing presence made her cautious. She liked him, yes, but the right time to tell him everything hadn't come yet. Later that evening, Chaik called her. They talked casually, sharing small stories about their day. She laughed at his clumsy attempt to cook rice and chicken, and he smiled at her gentle teasing. Yet, even in these ordinary conversations, Chaik could sense a shadow behind her words, a hesitation that made him wonder what she was holding back. A few days passed, and Chaik's curiosity grew. He suggested they go for a walk in a nearby park, hoping the change of scenery would give them a chance to talk freely. Amara agreed, though her smile didn't fully reach her eyes. In the park, children played nearby, couples strolled past, and the smell of wet grass hung in the air. Chaik felt at ease, hoping the peaceful setting would encourage honesty. During the walk, Chaik casually asked about her family. Amara paused, her fingers tightening around her cane. "I don't really have anyone left," she said softly. Chaik sensed the weight behind her words. He wanted to ask more, to dig gently, but he held back, fearing he might push too hard. They continued walking in silence for a few moments, each lost in thought. Chaik's heart raced with questions, yet he felt more drawn to her than ever. The mystery surrounding her past added an intensity he couldn't ignore. He wanted to protect her, understand her, and somehow be part of the life she had built despite the challenges she faced. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow across the park, Chaik realized he was no longer just attracted to her, it was deeper than that. But even as he embraced this growing feeling, he couldn't shake the certainty that Amara's truth, when revealed, could change everything between them. A week later, Chaik found himself back at the market, pretending to browse but really hoping to see Amara. She was there, as usual, carefully selecting fabrics for her sewing clients. Her hands moved with precision, and her voice rang out clearly as she asked the vendor questions. But today, there was a tension in her posture, a subtle stiffness that caught his attention immediately. He approached slowly. "Hey, Amara," he greeted, keeping his tone light. She looked up, smiling faintly. "Chaik, you're here again. Busy day." "Always," he said, trying not to let his curiosity show. "How's your week been?" Amara hesitated, then replied cautiously. "It's fine. Just busy with work." Her eyes flicked to the side, scanning the market crowd, and Chaik noticed her sudden alertness. Something, or someone, had caught her attention. Before he could ask, a woman walked past, stopping briefly near Amara. Chaik didn't catch the exchange, but he noticed the slight flinch in Amara's body, the way her grip tightened on her cane. She quickly returned her attention to him, brushing it off with a casual laugh. Chaik felt a pang of unease. The more he saw, the more he realized there was a whole part of Amara's life he didn't know. He wanted to ask questions, but he also didn't want to make her uncomfortable. Later that day, He invited her for another dinner, hoping the quieter setting would help her open up. Amara agreed, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of worry. During the meal, Chaik tried to make conversation about light topics, music, food, small city stories, but the moment of tension earlier lingered in his mind. After dessert, as they walked to her building, Chaik gently asked, "Amara, is there something you're not telling me?" She paused, looking at him, then away. "There are things I can't explain easily. You might not understand." Chaik took her hand lightly. "Try me. I want to understand you, all of you." For a moment, Amara remained silent. Then she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've lived with secrets for years. Losing my sight wasn't the worst of it. There are people who I can't let close. Not yet." Chaik felt a mixture of curiosity, concern, and determination. He knew whatever she was hiding, it was serious. And despite the warning in her voice, he couldn't step back now. His feelings had grown too strong. He wanted to help her, to be part of her life, no matter the cost. As they reached her apartment building, she thanked him for the evening and went inside. Chaik stood there for a moment, thinking about what she had said. He didn't know the full story yet, but he knew that the truth would change everything, and he was ready to face it, whatever it was. A few days passed, but Chaik couldn't stop thinking about Amara's words. He replayed every glance, every pause, trying to understand what she meant by people she couldn't let close. He wanted answers, but he also knew that pushing her too hard could scare her away. That evening, he decided to visit her unexpectedly, hoping a casual approach might help. When he arrived, he found her carefully stitching a dress by the window, her brow slightly furrowed in concentration. She looked up and smiled softly. "Chaik, you shouldn't just show up like this," she said, a hint of worry in her voice. "I wanted to see you," he replied simply. "No big deal, just checking in." Amara nodded, returning to her work. After a moment, she spoke quietly, almost to herself. "I hope he doesn't find out too soon." Chaik paused. Something about her tone sent a chill down his spine. He tried to stay casual, but the unease settled in his chest. Over the next hour, they talked about small things, clients, the city, the market. But Chaik's mind kept drifting back to her words. Finally, he asked, "Amara, who are you talking about? Who shouldn't find out?" She hesitated, then sighed. "It's complicated. People from my past, some wanted to take advantage of me, and others, let's just say I had to protect myself. I've learned to trust very few." Chaik felt the weight of her confession. He realized this wasn't just a simple story of a blind woman facing ordinary challenges. There were layers of danger and caution he hadn't imagined. Just then, a knock at her door startled them. Amara stiffened, her hand hovering over the door handle. It's nothing," she said quickly. "Just leave it." But Chaik saw the tension in her body. He couldn't ignore it. The knock was not casual, it carried an edge of warning. As the visitor walked away, Amara finally relaxed, letting out a long breath. "I'm sorry," she said, turning to Chaik. "I didn't want you to see that. Some people, they make life complicated." Chaik reached for her hand again. "I don't care about the complications. I care about you. Whatever your past, we can face it together." Amara looked at him, torn between caution and hope. She wanted to trust him, but the shadows of her past were long and dangerous. And she knew that sooner or later, Chaik would have to see the full truth, whether he was ready or not. That night, Chaik walked home, heart racing. He couldn't shake the feeling that Amara's life was about to collide with something bigger than either of them had imagined, and the choices he made next could change everything. The next morning, Chaik woke with a restless mind. He couldn't stop thinking about the knock on Amara's door the night before. Something about it felt deliberate, almost like a warning. He knew he had to be patient, but his curiosity was growing stronger. Later that day, he decided to visit the market again. Amara was there, as always, moving confidently among the stalls. Today, however, she seemed more cautious, glancing around and speaking softly to vendors. Chaik noticed immediately and wondered what she was hiding now. "Good morning, Amara," he greeted, trying to sound casual. She looked up, gave a small smile, and replied, "Good morning, Chaik. Busy day?" "Always," he said, scanning the crowd. "Are you okay? You seem on edge." Amara hesitated. She didn't want to involve him in her troubles yet, but she also couldn't lie. "There are some things I have to handle carefully," she said. "People who might not be kind." Chaik frowned, feeling the tension between honesty and secrecy. He wanted her to trust him, but he also understood that her caution came from experience. Still, he made up his mind to be there for her, no matter what. That evening, he walked her home, keeping his voice light. "Amara, I know there's more to your story. I want to understand it, whenever you're ready to share." She looked at him, conflicted, then nodded. "I'll tell you one day. Not now. But you need to know. I've had people in my life who weren't who they seemed. I had to protect myself, even if it meant being alone." Chaik didn't push further. He held her hand gently as they reached her apartment, wanting her to feel his support without adding pressure. As he walked back home, he replayed her words in his head. He realized that Amara's strength wasn't just in her independence or her calm demeanor. It was in the walls she built around herself to survive. And if he wanted to be part of her life, he would need patience, understanding, and trust. That night, a soft knock echoed at his own door. Confused, he opened it to find no one there, just a small envelope on the doorstep. Inside was a note, written in neat handwriting. "Some truths can't be ignored. Be careful with her heart." Chaik's stomach tightened. Someone knew about Amara, or perhaps, they knew about him. The message was a warning, a shadow creeping into their budding connection. And as he read it, he understood that falling for Amara would not only test his heart but also put him in the midst of secrets he could barely imagine. A few days later, Chaik felt the weight of the warning note pressing on his mind. He couldn't stop thinking about who might have sent it, or why. Despite his concern, he refused to pull back from Amara. If anything, he wanted to stay close, to show her he wasn't afraid of her past. That evening, he went to her apartment unannounced, hoping to see her before she got busy with her work. When she opened the door, she looked surprised but pleased. "Chaik, what brings you here?" "I wanted to check on you," he said softly. "You've been distant lately." Amara hesitated, then let him in. They sat at her small kitchen table, the soft hum of the city outside filtering through the window. For a moment, they just talked about small, ordinary things, the market, neighbors, little frustrations, but the tension lingered beneath the surface. Suddenly, the door creaked open. A man stepped in without knocking. Amara froze immediately, her body rigid, her grip tightening on her cane. Chaik instinctively moved in front of her. "Amara," the man said, his voice calm but carrying an edge. "We need to talk." Chaik's eyes narrowed. "Who are you?" "I know about her past," the man replied, ignoring Chaik. "And she knows this can't be ignored anymore." Amara spoke quickly, a mix of fear and resolve in her voice. "Please, not here. Not now. You don't understand, he doesn't need to." Chaik felt a surge of protectiveness. He could see the history between them, the tension, the unspoken threat. He realized that whatever Amara had been through, it wasn't just minor troubles, it involved people who had power over her life, even now. The man paused, glancing at Chaik, and for the first time, Chaik sensed a warning in his gaze. "Be careful," the man said, then turned and left without another word. Amara let out a shaky breath, slumping slightly. "I'm sorry," she said, looking down. "I didn't want you to see that. Some parts of my life, they aren't safe to share." Chaik shook his head. "It doesn't matter. I don't care about the danger or the secrets. I care about you. And I'm not leaving." For a moment, Amara's eyes glistened with emotion. "You're brave," she whispered. "Or maybe foolish. Either way, thank you." That night, Chaik walked home, heart racing. He knew the warning was real, and he understood that loving Amara meant accepting the shadows that came with her past. He also knew that the truth, once revealed fully, could change everything, but he was ready to face it. The next morning, Chaik couldn't shake the memory of the man at Amara's door. He kept thinking about what he had said and the unspoken danger that lingered. Despite that, he decided he had to see Amara, to reassure her that he wasn't afraid of her past. When he arrived at her apartment, Amara greeted him with a cautious smile. "Chaik, it's good you came," she said quietly. "We need to talk." They sat at her small table, the morning light spilling through the window. For a moment, neither spoke. The silence was heavy but necessary, as if both were waiting for the right words to arrive. Finally, Chaik broke it. "Amara, I saw the man yesterday. I don't know what's going on, but I need to understand. I can't be part of your life if I don't." Amara sighed, glancing down at her hands. "It's complicated. There are people from my past who caused a lot of trouble. When I lost my sight, I became vulnerable in ways I couldn't ignore. I've worked hard to protect myself ever since." Chaik listened closely, trying to absorb every word. "And this man?" he asked gently. "He's a reminder," she said softly, "of what I went through. And of the people I had to avoid. He's not dangerous to you, not yet. But if you want to be with me, you need to know that my life hasn't been easy. It's messy and it's painful." Chaik reached across the table and took her hand. "Amara, nothing you've been through changes how I feel. I don't care about the past. I care about you. And I'm willing to face anything with you, even if it's difficult." For the first time, a sense of relief crossed her face. "You really mean that?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "I do," he said firmly. "I'm not going anywhere." She took a deep breath and nodded. "Then I'll start telling you, but you have to promise me patience. I can't reveal everything at once. Some truths are heavy." Chaik smiled softly. "I promise. One step at a time." For the first time in weeks, Amara felt a flicker of hope. She realized that maybe, just maybe, she didn't have to face her past alone anymore. And Chaik, despite the shadows, was ready to stand by her, whatever came next. But even as they held hands, neither could ignore the quiet tension in the city outside. Amara's past was still very much alive, and the day was coming when the truth would be forced into the open, testing their bond in ways neither could imagine. A few days later, Chaik returned to Amara's apartment, prepared for the conversation they had promised. The air felt heavier than usual, as if the city outside had slowed down just for this moment. Amara was waiting, sitting on the small sofa, her cane resting against the table. Her expression was serious, a mix of fear and determination. "Chaik, I think it's time you know everything," she said softly, her hands fidgeting in her lap. Chike sat beside her, reaching for her hand without hesitation. "I'm ready," he said firmly. She took a deep breath, her voice trembling slightly. "Before I lost my sight, I was engaged. My fiancé, he wasn't who I thought he was. He was involved with people who wanted to use me, and I didn't realize it until it was almost too late. When I lost my vision, I had to disappear, start over, and protect myself from anyone who could hurt me again. That's why I've kept my life separate from everyone. I couldn't trust anyone, even those who seemed kind." Chike's stomach tightened. The story was worse than he had imagined, yet he felt a surge of admiration for her strength. "Amara, I had no idea," he said gently. "You went through so much, and you survived it all." She nodded, tears threatening to fall. "I had no choice. If I had let people in, I might have lost everything. But now, I don't want to hide anymore. I want to trust you, even if it's scary." Chike pulled her into a hug, careful not to startle her. "You don't have to face anything alone anymore. Whatever comes, we'll face it together. Your past doesn't define you, Amara. I see you for who you are now." A soft smile broke across her face, mingled with tears. For the first time, she felt that someone truly understood her, someone willing to stay even after knowing all the danger, all the pain. But even as they held each other, Chike knew this wasn't the end of the struggle. Amara's past had shadows that could reach them at any moment. The men who had appeared before, the people who had once tried to manipulate her, these weren't gone. They would eventually resurface, and Chike had to be ready, not just to protect her, but to face the truth of how far her past could stretch into their present. That night, walking home, Chike felt a strange mix of relief and tension. He had learned the truth, yet the weight of it reminded him that love sometimes demanded courage beyond what the heart could measure. And he was willing to take that risk, for Amara, for the life they could build together. The following evening, Chike returned to Amara's apartment, determined to face whatever shadows her past had cast over their lives. He found her sitting quietly, stitching a small piece of cloth, her expression calm but wary. She looked up as he entered. "Chike, I wasn't sure if I should tell you this next part," she said softly. "But it's time. There's someone who has been trying to find me, even now. They want to control things I've worked to protect, and I can't face it alone anymore." Chike stepped closer, taking her hand in his. "You won't have to," he said firmly. "Whatever comes, we face it together." Amara nodded, a mixture of relief and fear in her eyes. She explained that the man who had come to her apartment before wasn't alone. He was part of a group connected to her past fiancé. They had influence, and for years, she had avoided them, moving carefully and quietly. But now, they had discovered where she was. Chike's heart sank, but he didn't hesitate. "Then we prepare," he said. "We make sure they can't hurt you, and we show them you're not alone anymore." Together, they planned. Chike took steps to ensure her apartment was safe, kept watch over the building, and stayed by her side. Amara felt a weight lift from her shoulders, the burden of hiding, of fearing, of always being careful. She realized that with Chike, she didn't have to carry it alone. A week later, the group tried to approach her again, but Chike was ready. Calm, confident, and protective, he stood with Amara, facing them without fear. The men were taken aback by the strength of their unity, and Amara finally felt the power of trust and love. They left, realizing they could no longer intimidate her or control her life. Afterwards, Amara turned to Chike, her face shining with gratitude and relief. "I never thought I could feel safe again," she said. "But you've changed everything." Chike smiled, gently holding her hand. "You've always been strong, Amara. I just helped you see that you don't have to do it alone anymore." In the weeks that followed, life settled into a new rhythm. The market, the walks, the shared meals, all ordinary moments now carried a sense of peace. Amara's past no longer loomed over them, and Chaik realized that love wasn't about ignoring danger or pain, it was about standing together, facing it head-on, and refusing to let it define their future. And so, Chaik and Amara continued their lives, stronger together, proving that truth, trust, and unwavering support could overcome even the deepest shadows.